All right, guys, we're in game number 2 now. Echo LE is going to be the map, and we are looking at the pink Protoss spawning on the bottom right. Currently down 0-1, and looking for some retribution here on a map that maybe he might like just a little bit more. Playing for Team Spectre, ladies and gentlemen, this is KellerMaN. And against him, opposite side, which is, of course, the upper left, yellow Protoss, playing for Brawl Esports, ladies and gentlemen. This is the guy that was able to win last game with, well, a pretty timely push that just caught his opponent off guard. Lack of force fielding really just sealed the deal. Can he work that magic here again and push this to a 2-0 lead? Ladies and gentlemen, we have here for Brawl Esports, it is Zeal. So a little bit more background on just these two individual players. Zeal, he's played this game for a very long time, but he wasn't always known as this. The interesting thing is he only recently really changed to the name Zeal, and because he made Challenger with it, that's what everyone really knows him by now. But actually for a much, much longer time, his name was actually Ire, and he was on Team Ascension for quite some time. But since then, he's clearly improved his game quite a bit, which is why we're seeing him in such a more exposed role these days, and he's doing pretty well for himself here as well, so can't really argue with that. On the other hand, for KellerMaN, he's a Korean player, South Korean player, been around in the NA scene for quite some time. I believe he was on ND Game, No Dice Gaming, for many seasons, but then that team, I believe, folded, and then he's found his way onto Team Spectre. So both these players do have a pretty extensive history of playing in NA, in the NA community, as KellerMaN now is going to send out the first scout of the game. Right here we are seeing double gas here before Cyber for KellerMaN, which is, I would have to say, a little more gas heavy than last game, right? I mean, usually you go double Cyber or double gas before Cyber. It indicates that you're really trying to get out some kind of tech next. Of course, the next thing you look for is saturation on the assimilators, and looks like Zeal just went ahead and added the last two probes. KellerMaN has had them saturated for quite some time. So, well, both players are mining quite a bit of gas here, to say the least. First, going to be spent on Warp Gate research, as well as a Stalker here for Zeal. Mothership Core as well. Of course, the Mothership Core is just such an integral component. I mean, last game wasn't good enough for KellerMaN because the Photon Overcharge expired, and then by that time, Zeal already warped in so many more units, right? But ultimately, it's a huge difference maker, because without it and your opponent all ins, it's really tough, right? So having that is definitely really important. Having that Photon Overcharge, not losing it. I've seen also players get overly aggressive with their Mothership Cores. They do some cute things, bring it across the map, start killing workers, which is nice and funny until they get attacked. They used a recall to save their Mothership Core, and then they have nothing, right? So you have to be really judicious with your use of that unit. Twilight Council for KellerMaN, finishing up, but not before the same building for Zeal pops into view. So we may be looking at dueling blinks here, as KellerMaN starts blink on that Twilight Council as well. So both players opening up very similarly this time around compared to last game. And Zeal is sending his Mothership Core over here, so he wants to see what he can do here, and he's going to move it right into the attack range of the Stalker. Going to lose all its shield. We're going to be seeing a recall here. I think this is just a scout as much as anything here for Zeal. He is actually going to go after a probe. I guess he'll recall it, before it dies. And he just snipe a probe, gets in scouting. But now, of course, he is going to be left without, Photon Overcharge for a bit. Is that going to be an issue for him? Well, I don't see KellerMaN setting up any proxy pylons just yet. So if he wants to attack, he's not making it, too soon. And given that that's the case, shouldn't be too big of an issue for Zeal there, having to use that energy on the Mothership Core. And we're seeing two Stalkers from Zeal just sort of chase down that of KellerMaN, as KellerMaN is just running away as best he can. Additional gateways going now for KellerMaN. Robo Facilities. So that's something to keep an eye out for. Both players, in fact, doing that as well. So, if you're planning to mount a defense against Blink All In, what's the easiest way to do it? getting some of those immortals, right? And then, of course, if you're worried as well about the quick transition to DT, or maybe just even blinking into your opponent's base, of course, having the Observer is a very, very important thing too. So I've seen both players consider those options as KellerMaN is moving out with some Stalkers through the center of the map. Zeal as well staying active, trying to get that map control. Ever so important, because really, without towers on Echo, the best way you can really keep an eye on things is to be active out on the field. So we do see Zeal here actually going to move his way all the way into the natural. KellerMaN choosing to expand first. Rather would defend and just play more economically. Is that going to hurt him in the short run? Right now, Soccer's here is softening up this Nexus, and my goodness, KellerMaN did not even see this proxy pylon over here, which is such an unfortunate thing. He's going to have to face off against Zeal right now because he doesn't want to cancel that Nexus if he doesn't have to. But look who has more Stalkers again, guys. Just like last game, Zeal here has the advantage when it comes to unit count, and this Nexus is going to be a goner here. Cancellation is guaranteed to happen, and you know, this is truly unfortunate for KellerMaN, who was poking out on the map with the Stalkers, but didn't poke where he needed to, didn't see that proxy pylon. Now Zeal again knocking on the door of his opponent, and we are seeing KellerMaN on the ropes as he's trying to warp in some Stalkers back home to stay and defend this one. He's going to get Immortals, though. That is going to be a critical piece to this defense. In the meantime, though, Zeal more than happy to take his Nexus and his natural, which means he is going to buy himself a nice little economic lead. So, well, KellerMaN going to have to try to retake it now. And for goodness sake, is he going to take out that proxy pylon? There you go, buddy. He's going to go after that here and be able to extinguish that threat for the time being. Zeal here just going to keep all his Stalkers out here on the center because as far as he's concerned, he can see when KellerMaN's coming, blink away with his fast reflexes so he doesn't lose any Stalkers if KellerMaN advances. So he'll just be content with sending him this kind of a trap here, I guess. Otherwise, KellerMaN's just going to hang out at home for a little bit as he tries to get back on his feet here because his Nexus, 60% done, but Zeal is fully done here. And starting to mine a decent amount. He's up by 3 probes at the moment compared to 31. Nice lead in supply as well. Remember when Zeal attacked KellerMaN, he had the lead in units. He was leading in the number of Stalkers, and he took out quite a few more of KellerMaN's units, which is why we're seeing Zeal enjoy this kind of a lead at this moment. So I have to wonder at what point KellerMaN is going to feel like he needs to do something to make sure he's not falling further and further behind, because that's how these games go, right? Someone gets ahead, they're only going to get more ahead because they're mining more, they're researching more tech. It's exponential. That growth, that lead is going to change exponentially. So it's up to the guy who's behind to do something to change that trajectory, because if he doesn't, well, he's just going to basically pencil in a loss for himself, right? So KellerMaN at some point, I'd have to think, will need to get aggressive, some kind of pressure on his opponent. But for now, it seems like he's content to just kind of macro up here, despite all the early losses he took. So he's cranking on additional Immortal, adding on Robotics Bay, and both players, in fact, are doing that. So we're going to be seeing some Colossus Wars here, I would imagine, in late game scenario. So we are seeing research as well for upgrades, +1 attack on the forges for both players. So really the transition, the mid-game strategy and the transition into it from the early game is very similar for both guys. It's not really a big difference. Both have on their minds going Robo, researching on 1 forge as opposed to being greedy and doing 2. But one guy is still just a slight bit ahead of the other. That's just how it is. Nothing's happened to him yet to change that. So yeah, Zeal is still up by 3 workers, a little bit in supply, about 9, and he started his 3rd a hair sooner as well. Now, one thing though, going for KellerMaN, as much as I've been trying to say, oh, he's behind, is that, you know, if both players max out, anything can happen. We've seen this so many times with 2 Protoss players going at it with that typical Robo army with some gateway units thrown in. Is that someone just gets the wrong position. They didn't have that concave. They attacked into someone else's concave, whatever, right? And then once that happens, suddenly, boom, like the whole game just turns on its head because maybe one guy, you know, was set up to be in a much stronger position following the battle. But because the battle went so poorly that he just didn't have the time to immediately reinforce his army, and then at that point, the guy who was formerly behind actually gets the upper hand and maybe even wins. So long as we can get to that point here, KellerMaN not out of it by any means, although he is now seeing a 6 worker deficit as well as a greater deficit in the supplies. Zeal is done with his 3rd. Going to transfer some workers over there to start mining. We're going to see KellerMaN with his finished nexus as well, but has yet to start taking advantage of it. And upgrades. Again, that's another huge thing, because really when both players are maxed, who's got the stronger army, right? Upgrades a big part of that. Pretty even on the most part. We're seeing +2 attacks, sorry. Same progress for both players. And then Zealot legs, you know, Zeal's a little faster with that. But it's not really too big of a difference. Not really too big of a deal at all. Unit count tab, that's almost like also another amazing way to look at the situation. And Colossus count is certainly a big deal. There's just no really easy way to make up for a Colossus deficit. If you're behind in Colossus, it's not like the old days where you can just crank out Tempest and, you know, that's like your way of stealing a win. No, not anymore. Not without that bonus damage to Colossi. So really, you know, Archons don't quite cut it. They don't have enough range to them to really compete with Colossi. So you really do have to have an advantage on that count. So far, both players actually kind of even again on that too. Zeal was leading in that, not anymore. Even on both sides. But Zeal, sensing that he is ahead, is looking to make an attack. He's bringing all his units down here to the lower center of the map. KellerMaN, of course, just staying at home this whole time and defending. He's kind of moved his units in a peculiar way, quasi-concave, as Zeal is just kind of scouting the situation. He's got this observer all in KellerMaN's army, and he's trying to evaluate, you know, when it's the right time to move in. I think he is sensing that it's now, guys. So with +2 finish from both sides, a 20 supply lead for Zeal. Is it going to do the trick? Everybody's going after each other right now. Zealots not quite in front for Zeal, but finally make their way forward. We get some Archons as well, extinguished fairly quickly. And we see a Warp Prism warping in Zealots right at the feet of the Colossus. Nice maneuver there from Zeal. And that takes out one of the Colossi, and KellerMaN now just stuck with the last 3 as Zeal, with the bigger army, forces another GG, guys. The Brawl Esports player now has pushed the lead to